let's again start with the UFL Power Rankings. After week 1, we're going to go from number 8 to number 1. 8 teams. Somebody got to be at the bottom. Somebody got to be at the top. But at number 8, I have the Houston Roughnecks off the rip. I thought perhaps they needed a little bit more out of the backfield. Now, Jared Guantano was great, 16-21 for 157. Seemed to come together there a little bit at the end, but they had a really difficult time moving the football, even as that defensive line is going to be a problem for the league. The rest of the 9 games, I think, are really going to go their way if they can get USFL Offensive Player of the Year last year, Mark Thompson, back to do some nice things for them. I think they got a shot to make a run, but getting that loss at Rice Stadium to start the season, not great. Number 7 on the list, I'm going with the Arlington Renegades, who took a loss to the Birmingham Stallions, which, that's what they do. We'll talk about them in a little bit. But I thought, given what Coach Stoops has on that roster, I expected more, frankly. I expected to see Luis Perez a little bit sharper. And when they brought Lindsey Scott in, I'm thinking that's a guy that threw for 4,000 yards in college. He's running the ball quite a bit more than I would like to see him. I'd like to see him sling it from time to time if you're going to have him out there. And he did, right? We got to see him throw it a couple of times inside the 25-yard line. But mostly, I'm looking at that defense. I'm looking at that offensive line. I'm going, you can't give up the kind of yardage that you were giving up if you're that defense to the Birmingham Stallions in week 1, when it seemed like Matt Corral was having a really difficult time trying to figure out what you were doing. I thought that Chuck Long was finding some things that worked for Luis Perez while they were also trying to find a way to run the football. But I'm not sure that there's anything nice to say about a defense that gave up 16 points in the second half, offense that scored just 3 at home. Again, you are the defending XFL champions, and there was XFL and USFL pride on the line for both of those, as that was the Clash of Champions, and it looks like the chasm between the Renegades and the Stallions could grow larger if Coach Stoops doesn't get it back on the good foot. At number 6, I have the DC Defenders, who also took an L to start week 1, but returned the XFL's Offensive Player of the Year in Jordan Ta'amu. And if he doesn't go 25 of 45 for 235, I'm not sure they're in that game late. But they weren't really in that game to begin with because it got away from them in the first half with a few things that just didn't go their way. And then Gene DeLance made a bad situation worse, right? You pick up the personal foul penalty for spitting on a player, right? That takes off a TD, and then it moves the ball back 15 yards. And then you move back another 5 yards because Gene DeLance had false started on the play where he ended up spitting on someone else. You're getting it way out of position to where you could try to go see it 6. And then Jordan Ta'amu gets hit so hard, he goes down. They got to take him out of the game. You got to bring in DeAndre Francois. It just was not a good look for the DC Defenders. And Reggie Barlow's got some work for himself and his staff, as this was a team that was 9-1 last year. Granted, they start this game on the road, but against a San Antonio Brahmas team that we didn't think was going to be that good, and really got taken to the woodshed and is still looking to score its first TD of the season. I think I have them at number 6, though, because I see the talent there. I know what Jordan Ta'amu is capable of. I saw Ty Scott making some plays here and there. I think they can find a way to get this thing righted and make a run beginning even this week, right, toward the playoffs. Again, we're week 1 of a 10-week season, so a lot of moving and shaking here, but it's difficult to see positives from that Defenders team, given that they were really putting themselves in harm's way, and you got to do something about Gene DeLance. That can't happen. That was an opportunity to take the game back, and they just weren't able to do it. Number 5 on the list, I have the St. Louis Battlehawks, who seem like controlling the game at Ford Field against the Michigan Panthers for most of the game, and yet could not come up with a win. I thought, one, A.J. McCarron knows exactly what he is doing. His return to that franchise is really giving them a lift, because having that experience going into year 2 at the quarterback position is invaluable in a league like this one, where continuity is not a given, right? Where you got to have a guy come in and pick it up on the fly. Say Matt Corral at Birmingham, saw how that started in the first half. A.J. McCarron comes in knowing what he's doing, and when you are trying to run the ball and you can't, he's looking at you going, put the ball in my hands. And when they decided to do that late in the game, it looked like they had an opportunity to go and win it. He finishes 24-37, 216. But I think the point to raise here is they had this game won until you get a 64-yard field goal from a kicker that hadn't made a field goal since high school. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But I think the Battlehawks can make a run to the playoffs. I think it's a really good football team. It just didn't go their way in week 1. which ain't no sin, but you can still turn that around and take some positives from what they were able to do well, both offensively and defensively. All right, now we're getting to the top half of the UFL. And I got the Michigan Panthers at 4 because they won the game, right? They beat the Battlehawks. And if I want to be harsh about it, I could probably put the Battlehawks ahead of the Michigan Panthers based on how the game progressed. But I got to give credit to a team that found a way to win at home when they didn't win at home until the last week of last season last year, right? Mike Nolan getting that win at Ford Field is a tremendously big deal for that franchise and for those fans that really want to see that team win at home. Now, also in there, EJ Perry did not have a great game at quarterback. 2 interceptions he threw in that. Couple of plays that I know he wanted to have back, but Wes Hills actually showed up to be a pretty doggone good running back. He was great with the New Orleans Breakers last year, 11 rushes, 85 yards. And then you had a team that bent but did not break defensively, right? I really like Deshaun White, former Oklahoma Sooner, right? But I also like that they got Breland Speaks back there. I think that defense could really be outstanding and really be the strength of that Panthers franchise if EJ Perry does not turn the ball over. And then you get to play the kind of football I think Mike Nolan wants to play, which is controlling the clock on offense and then grinding teams out on defense. But there is no substitute for having an outstanding kicker. I mean, looking at Josh Bates coming out cold, he'd been hitting from 65 yards without a rush. And Mike Nolan wasn't in position to where he wanted to say, I'm going to throw him out there to try to make 60-yarders on week 1. But they didn't really have a choice, right? They needed to go get the points. It's 64 yards. The game is on the line. Josh Bates had not kicked a field goal since high school, comes out, kicks the ball, finds out the timeout to get him ice, puts through the uprights. So one, you get to know that he's got the leg for this and he has the accuracy for this. But to come back and do it twice in a row and then to win the game, yeah, man, that's giving me Brandon Aubrey vibes, right? For those of y'all that are coming over from the XFL, Brandon Aubrey was a known commodity in the USFL for the Birmingham Stallions for a couple of years. Matter of fact, the general managers in that league would be like, why isn't this guy getting an invitation to NFL training camps? Well, he did last July for the Dallas Cowboys and went from playing for a USFL championship to all-pro and setting a record for the most field goal attempts made in a row, 19, in his rookie season, right? Josh Bates is going to get a call to go to an NFL training camp this summer. I know that because I've already had NFL personnel tell me, yeah, we saw the leg. We saw him do it twice. We saw him do it with the game on the line. We saw him do it against the rush. That guy has a role in the NFL, and that's exactly what I think the UFL is trying to do. Showcase these players that may have been forgotten about or may not have had the opportunity to show. Remember, Brandon Aubrey didn't play organized football until he got to the USFL, and Josh Bates hadn't kicked a field goal since high school, and now he feels like one of those guys that's a shoe-in to get into an NFL training camp come July. Number 3 on the list, let's talk about the Memphis Showboats. I genuinely love this team. I love this team because I love the city of Memphis. I love what the University of Memphis has meant for that franchise. And I really love John DeFilippo, who got his first opportunity to be a head coach last year for the New Orleans Breakers. And I thought did a really great job making that team really freaking competitive. And one of the reasons that was so is he, like Skip Holtz with the Birmingham Stallions, calling the plays from the sideline, holding the play card. But I think with Case Cookus, you could have one of the best tandems in head coach, play caller, quarterback that we have in this league, because Cookus came off the bench for the Philadelphia Stars in 2022 to become their starting quarterback, comes back in 2023, and has an outstanding year once again. I think between those two guys, you have a quarterback that is a veteran in this league, has played a lot of professional football, and a head coach, play caller, quarterbacks coach in John DeFilippo, who has been an offensive coordinator in the NFL, who helped coach Nick Foles into being a Super Bowl winning quarterback at Philadelphia, and a guy that is going to demand that his quarterback understand the offense and goes out there and makes some plays. And I think Case Cookus did a great job of doing just that. I would like to see him take a few, let's say, less savage hits. I don't want him to get hit that often as much as he did. And I know that he wants to take off running with the football, but that ain't what it is, right? That ain't what it is. You a married man now, right? That's how long he's been in this league. He has since got engaged, got married, and now he's back in this league as a veteran. I need you to start reporting yourself like one. They were also able to get scoop and score against the Houston Roughnecks. I thought the defense was showing up in a good way. But if that relationship between Cookus and DeFilippo blossoms, it would not shock me at all to find out that the Memphis Showboats make it into the UFL's inaugural playoff season. All right, let's go to number 2 on the list. I got the San Antonio Brahmas here. I thought, one, for Wade Phillips to become, believe it or not, the first head coach to be a head coach at 3 different Texas pro football franchises. Very cool. But he's coming over from being a Houston Roughnecks head coach, and he's bringing that staff with him. So I didn't really know what to expect, and I'm learning about them on the fly, right? Say on the fly, since the merger. And I was looking at who they had at quarterback, and Chase Garbers, known commodity at Cal. I get that. But A.J. Smith, offensive coordinator, showed me a lot, right? Now, XFL folks would know that's one of the more innovative play callers in that league last year, and also kind of a wonderkin. This is a guy who was calling offensive plays for a high school at 21 years old. He knows from football, and he was really good at getting Chase Garbers and that offense into outstanding positions to go make plays. But I was more impressed by not the 27 points they put up, but Chase Garbers just taking care of the football, which is no mean feat in the UFL. Scored 3 TDs, 2 passing, went for just 19 to 25 for 158. But again, you didn't turn the ball over, which means you gave your defense an opportunity to pin its ears back and go get people, and they responded, right? 4 sacks of the DC Defenders quarterbacks in that game. And then you're bringing back a guy who's a great playmaker, and John Trey Kirkland, who was wide receivers and quarterback at LSU. He had, 8 catches for 61 yards and a TD, right? That's solid day's work for what's going to probably be your playmaker. But the guy that broke the game open with the thick 6 was Alex Mollett. And I, like you, had a lot of fun watching Brad Wing with the shade visor on, drop back, scan the field, and find the center wide open who was eligible and not only make that pass, but Alex Mollett looked around and said, hey, fat guys don't get down. They get into the end zone, and ran it all the way in there. I was ecstatic for this, right? Because I know my guy Jeff Schwartz, offensive lineman, one of my favorite offensive linemen, is already talking about this being the best play in UFL history. And you know what? We're not going to argue with that. That was really cool. It also opened up a lead for the San Antonio Brahmas to really be able to take control of the game in the second half. But I didn't expect to see a trick play on that particular down and distance. And I certainly didn't expect Brad Wing to throw a TD to an eligible center. Really excited about the San Antonio Brahmas, who we thought to start going to probably be in that bottom 4, right? But already they're 1-0, and they're looking like the class of the XFL conference. And then at number 1, Birmingham Stallions, man. I am so impressed with what Coach Holtz and general manager Zach Potter have been able to do over the last 2+ years, right? Because one, you won back-to-back USFL championships. You take on the XFL champion in week 1 at their house, and you get a W by double digits with a new starter at quarterback in Matt Corral. That's 1. 2 is, you win 2 in a row, you're good. You win 3 in a row, you're a dynasty. And that is what the Birmingham Stallions are chasing in 2024. They're looking to be dynastic, which in spring football, my goodness, man, with the amount of turnover that we have in this sport, with going from the USFL starting in 2022, the XFL starting in 2023, and then the merger to the UFL in 2024, to be able to go 22-3 over your first 25 games over a 3-year season, I don't know that you could do any better than that, man. I mean, we could say undefeated, but that's really not fair. I would say that what Birmingham is doing is even more impressive to me than the run that Georgia went on, because the continuity is not assured. It's that simple, right? You got coaches that come and go. You got players that are going into the NFL, going into the CFL, that were going into the XFL last year, and yet you're still able to put together a roster that can go out there and get W's. I'm excited to see what the Stallions can do in this league. Want to see if they can keep this momentum up. And we're going to talk about it each and every week for the rest of the regular season into the playoffs. Try to see who's going to be our UFL champion in its first season. If you like what you've seen, consider subscribing to the #1 college football show on YouTube, the Fox Sports app, or wherever you get your podcast.